Thank you for joining William Steele, True Crime and Steal the Spotlight Television, and now Public Relations. Hey, season 2 of Inmate to Roommate, right around the corner from what I'm told. I don't have the inside information, but I have a phenomenal guest here today. She's a woman who's written some stories about me and about some of the things I experienced with Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein and about my book on that topic. And she's one of the, in my opinion, one of the top journalists in the world. Works for the she works for the Sun magazine and of London, and she's been out in Los Angeles before writing a lot of celebrity news, and everybody knows Emma. So Emma Parry is an award-winning journalist, and she agreed to sit still for an interview for a few minutes here. So Emma, thank you to my welcome to my show.
Thank you. Thank you for your very kind and generous words, William. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Okay, so with that intro, and as you know, my co-author works for one of your competitors, Gary Greenberg. He works for the Inquirer, so he's been on my show before. You guys have, I'm not going to even say friends, but we became pretty good acquainted with each other. We know a lot about each other's past, and it's good because then you become a journalist that I trust to really open up to. So that being said, tell us something about your past and your drive, and how did you become a journalist, telling these important stories about some really fascinating people and some dangerous and infamous people as well.
Well, I've always been keen on writing, and I've always been fascinated with the news, even from a young age. And as I got older, it was always my dream to become a journalist. So I just went the traditional route, went to university, did a journalism course, and then once I actually started in journalism, I found my passion really was um, getting the victim stories.
Mm-hmm.
So covering crime, but not just the monsters who commit the crime, the people who survive these crimes. So often we do fixate on the murderer, on the
Right.
predator, and we forget about the victims and I know, or survivors of these crimes. Not everyone wants to be victimized. These are brave people who have survived like horrific things. So I always try to, any story I can get involved in where I can tell the victim's point of view, I will always try and do that. And yeah, that's something that's always, it's just, I think that's been a theme throughout my career is I will always, try be an advocate for female victims of domestic violence, of sexual abuse, and males as well. I
Right.
think we can learn a lot from victims. We can learn we can hold people to account by using these victim stories and by empowering victims to come forward and talk about it and to not be afraid. And I think times have changed now. It used to be that victims didn't want to come forward because they felt like they wouldn't be believed. I think the Me Too movement has really changed that, and victims are empowered now, and they do feel like they can come forward and people will actually believe what they're saying.
Right. Another friend of mine in London, which I believe you're in London or nearby. Her name's Kerry Lenski. Kerry has an organization on Facebook called Lady Justice, and she does exactly what you described. She advocates for victims, and she's been a really good friend. She introduced me to two or three people that interviewed me in the UK, including Sean Atwood. And one of my interviews, I think, got like over 300,000 views, and he's invited me to London to do some more interviews. So, is there the organization that you're involved with that you'd like to give a shout out to that we can give a little publicity to? I'd be glad
To
to
be
do that.
honest, no, and I'm always open to work with any organization. All my stories come from different avenues. I might try to contact victims directly on through social media. It might come from a friend through a friend, that kind of thing. There is an organization in the UK called Women's Aid. I do try to work closely with them in the extent that I always try to make sure stories are written in the right tone, so we're not sensationalizing
Right.
anything. Most of the time, you don't need to sensationalize. The truth is sensational enough. The horrible things that people have gone through, they don't need to be exaggerated in any way. So, and I think when it comes to people's lives, you need to have that kind of level of respect. So I work with them closely to make sure that I get the tone right. Um, but yeah, in terms of I'm just always open to work with any organization or any individual to expose these stories, expose these predators, expose wrongdoing.
We have to have you on some more shows here on specific cases. I think you'd be a good asset to come on once in a while. Since I got released, I did 18 years for nonviolent crimes, and for your audience, so now I write books, but I'm a crime victim advocate. I also advocate for people that are wrongfully convicted, people that are in prison innocent. I was a law clerk for many years, and I need to vet the case and speak to everybody because I had one person try to con me and get on my show to tell his story of actual innocence, and he wasn't, and it was going to be really embarrassing to my platform. So we advocate for seniors and victims, and my fiancee Mary, who you've met, she does as well, and that's how we met. She read my book about Robert Durst, and it was really written from the point of view of exposing him for what he was all about and crime victim advocacy. And she said, reading that book, sight unseen, she fell in love with me. Talking to her on the phone a few weeks before I got out of prison, I fell in love with her. So here we are together doing the exact same thing. We like you, we have a heart for victims. And some people, the haters and all that, might not want to believe that because of my past. But my mother was mentally ill. So I know what it is to see vulnerable people preyed upon, bullied, picked on, and how to come to their defense. And that's what I've always done, in and out of incarceration. I went bad because I developed a cocaine problem. So I used some of my skills to do stupid things. I try not to glorify any of that stuff. I only tell those stories to lead people to hear me when I say, don't follow in my footsteps, because I lost many years in prison. I've lost contact with family members and all kinds of horrible things. So let's get back on you. So that's the one aspect of your life. Now you're this like super famous journalist. Like put you in Los Angeles to
I
cover
don't know. I
celebrities.
think super famous is probably an exaggeration, but you're very kind. I mean, one thing I'd like to add to what you were just saying, Bill, is that what I admire about you and for other people who do this is that you're not afraid of these powerful people, and I think people like Epstein got away with doing what they did for so long because people normalized their behavior and everybody was afraid to stick up, to stick up to them, to go against them. Whereas, you've written books about two very powerful people, and you've done that. You've been unafraid to do that, and I think people can take inspiration from that, including me, including other journalists. Is it's not easy as people think to get a story published. Get it through lawyers and take legal risks. It's not easy to do that.
Right.
As a journalist, you've done that all by yourself without any legal backing or the backing of a big organization. So yeah, I think that's a really admirable thing that we can all take inspiration
I
from.
appreciate it. I get a little choked up because to this day there's people that you're so full of it. Who are you? You couldn't have possibly changed. Well, it's been almost 3 years. I'm doing good. I'm doing the same things. We just did a big expose on a local assisted living, and we got hit with cease and desist letters from a big law firm. Take the videos down. We'll sue you out of existence. And I'm like, wait a minute. Defamation. The truth is an outright defense to defamation in the United States. And in
Yeah.
the state where we are, it's single party consent state, meaning we can record anybody we want in the state. And everything we said on the show, and my co host is Ignacio Esteban, retired ATF agent. So it was myself, Mary, and we did part one of an expose about Medicaid waiver fraud and triple billing practices, all this crazy stuff, ripping off seniors left and right. So, abundance of caution, I took down the show, but I know it's legally defensible. Well, for us explaining to the authorities what was going on there, they terminated Mary. Well, one of the most prominent attorneys in this area looked over all the recordings in her case, and he took on the case to now sue them for wrongful termination for engaging in a protected activity. On top of that, a friend of ours was there. I had power of attorney for less than a week, and a guardian stepped in, took her into her control. A complete stranger steps in, and then says that I abused the power of attorney. Well, everything I did, I have her on video because now I'm a crime victim advocate, but I do have my history. So every move I make, I document it with video. And so I like, hey, I'm not going to say her name on the air because she's elderly and she's a friend, but I say, may I film you and make sure your request is well known? I have your power of attorney. You can revoke it at any time. Is it okay if we do this, that, and the other thing? Is that still what you want to do? 3 purchases. One was a McDonald's, one was an Amazon purchase for a blanket. She wanted a new blanket for her bed. And the other one was a lawyer to fight this bogus guardianship attempt. And I said, you sure you want me to use your money to find you a lawyer? So I had 2 lawyers. One come to see her. The other one she retained with her money. Well, last week they made a big deal about it in court. Oh well, you're got this history, and you spent in Amazon, and you spent in McDonald's. I said, really? She's in the passenger seat with me. I have power of attorney. It's being filmed from the back seat with her permission. And the food bag went right into her hand. $8 McDonald's. You think I'm going to steal $8 in food from an 85-year-old lady? So what they'll do everything they can to demonize you. But when they made the accusations, they had no clue that we had recordings of the actual incidents, and every one
Yeah.
of them. And then they said, well, what about this cash withdrawal? And I says, well, how do I enter the video into evidence? Because she's requesting an attorney. I brought her two. One is a guy that just interviewed her and couldn't take the case, but he referred this other guy. And I said, and he's sitting 2 feet to my right. I said, Al, how about you speak up and tell him that I paid you the morning of her last court appearance? And he says, Your Honor, no, that money was for her and went directly to me. There's nothing inappropriate. But these guardianship companies and these assisted living, they'll do anything to try to destroy a whistleblower, to try to destroy a witness. And so, we're just in the process of just clearing that mess up.
Yeah, I think it's probably a bigger scandal than even what you've uncovered, but particularly with senior senior people in these homes who, they don't have their own power of attorney. They may have dementia or other mental health issues with their memory, they're very, very vulnerable,
Mhm.
across the US, across the UK, across the world.
Yes.
So you're probably just scratching the surface of what is going of scandal affecting senior people in these senior living homes.
There's two great documentaries out. One is called The Guardians. Check it out if you want to know all the scams involved with what these guardians do. And the other one is called I Really Do Care. The guardians taking control of people, hiding them from loved ones. And then Mary's a member of the ACFE, the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, and she's also a member in good standing of StopProbateFraud.com, which they investigate a lot of these guardianship cases. They help put judges in prison, and a lot of these people go down for racketeering when their scam's over with, and they've run it for 10 or 20 years. The feds or somebody finally step in and it ends it. So see a lot of red flags going on, and tons of evidence that's been gathered. Um, yeah, but those are really good ones. I'm gonna put the links in the description for the audience if you want to learn more about guardianship scams and assisted living pitfalls. I'm actually putting out two books about that. One about assisted living, and another one about guardianship programs in the United States. They don't like that one bit. So, we do what we do, and I really and I appreciate you recognizing that, because my heart's really in it, because my mother was mentally ill, and I will not stand by and let's see anybody get victimized the way these people are, vulnerable people can be. That
Yeah.
being said, tell me about your journalism career. And so you get hired on where first? Where do you start working when you first start your journalism?
And so I started working at the Press Association, which is a news agency, and I went on their trainee course, which was very kind of a very traditional training. I was like a trainee journalist for about 3 years with them, where we did the shorthand, we did a lot
Right.
of court, a lot of trials. Um, and then it wasn't long, I was there for about 3 years, and then it was not long after that I joined The Sun, which I've been with for the past maybe 10 years, give or take a couple of years off I had to have kids. So yeah, I've been with the Sun a long time. I love working there. We just expanded the operation into the US, so we have a UK and US operation. And yeah, I love working there. In the UK, we're known for, having a working class readership and presenting the news in a really kind of accessible, punchy, tongue in cheek sometimes way, a bit like the New York Post. We're definitely entertaining as well as
Right.
informative. But yeah, I've just always really enjoyed working for the publication, worked on some amazing stories both in the UK and the US. Been really lucky to do a mixture of things like celebrity and crime stuff.
Right.
And but like I said earlier, that I think my passion is definitely doing those victim stories and getting those victims, giving those victims a voice, to tell the world what they've been through.
I think when you and I first met, I was still incarcerated. It was before COVID, just before COVID. And you were in
Yeah,
California.
it was jarring. Yeah, I remember because I remember you telling me about the conditions in the prison
Hmm.
during COVID. I think maybe it was just before and then COVID started, and because things were really rough inside for you during COVID, right?
Yeah, it was horrible. I was one of the people advocating for masks just as a precautionary measure. Forget the argument whether they work or not. If I have something I'm breathing through, it's less stuff I'm inhaling, right? So, I just, always wanted them. And so they tried, as a law clerk and as an advocate for the inmates, they tried to lock me up. The administration said, well, you're going to cause a riot. You're scaring people. This thing's not killing anybody. I said, really? Look at the prison systems all over the world. How many inmates are dying? We're fortunate that we don't have it in this facility yet. We need masks for everybody, and we need some social distancing. They threatened me so many times for spreading the word. Eventually, a few months later, they issued masks to everybody. They locked down everybody. People were dying all over the place in my prison. So yeah, you and I met, and I think at that time my book about Ghislaine Maxwell first came out.
Yeah, I think you were still writing. I think I first was in contact with you about your book about Durst.
Robert Durst, right? Okay, so let me follow up with you because I don't know if I told you all this. So when I got out, he finally was going to trial in Los Angeles,
Yeah.
and Mary and I actually went there to support the victims. And so
Wow.
I didn't really necessarily realize at the time. I think they frown upon you filming in the courthouse. So, but anyway,
Yeah, you need permission.
I can't hear you. I have something in my eye. So anyway, so there's a statue of Lady Justice, and there's this big board, and his name's coming up on it. His the time Robert Durst's trial is starting, and I happened to have a lot of cash on me at the time, so I had a lot of cash on me at that time, and so I had a big banded stack of $100 bills, and I'm filming underneath Lady Justice and his name, and I'm like, Lady Justice, how much does his family have to pay you? Robert Durst have to pay you to let him off, convict him? I'm standing up for the victims, and so I'm in the courthouse waving this bunch of cash around in front of Lady Justice, and then did I tell you how his attorney acted when he saw me?
No.
Well, if you remember the book, there was a time when a certain party tried to pay me a lot of money to stay quiet. And
Yeah.
right, so the attorney at the time, his attorney was Dick DeGuerin, who represented the guy from Waco, um, David Koresh. So Dick DeGuerin's there. They're taking a recess. Court TV, all these news organizations are there. I'm passing out books to various people. The prosecutor comes out. I forget his name at this particular moment. But anyway, he's the cold case prosecutor. I shook his hand, handed him a copy of my book, and he shook my hand. He said, "How you doing?" And he goes, "Wait a minute, you're William Steele." He said, "How the hell did you get out of prison?" I said, "I got out a few weeks ago, and I came here to support your prosecution of this serial killer." And he goes, "Well, yeah, I don't have time to talk." He got pretty curt with me, and he,
Yeah.
he moved on. He gave me my book back. He didn't want it. So then Dick DeGuerin, with his big cowboy hat, came out with his entourage. He had about, I don't know, about 4 or 5 attorneys and paralegals trailing behind him. Dick DeGuerin lays eyes on me because I'd met him before outside of prison in the South. And he looked at me and he screamed right in front of the bailiff and Mary and all the journalists that were right there. He said, "Cannibalism." Because Durst was bragging that he had ate one of his victims. So I put it in my book. So he freaked out on me, and then he left. And then the bailiff said, "Are you going to be okay? Is that attorney okay with you?" I said, "Yeah, he's just surprised to see me here. They all think I'm in prison on the East Coast."
I mean, people must think it's such a, you've led such a colourful life to have been rubbing shoulders with Robert Durst and then Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. It's a very interesting path you've taken.
Wait till you hear about Robert Wagner. I'll give you that story one day. So anyway, so he later after the recess break, we were filming, and I was, we were in the courtyard of this courthouse. Now Britney Spears was going through her, what do they call that thing they had on her? Not a guardianship, but the
Yes, to get the
conservatorship.
freedom,
Yeah.
conservatorship.
So
Yeah.
what they did, it was two big cases at the same time. So they moved Durst to the courthouse in Inglewood and kept Britney Spears' case because there was media scrums at both things at the same time. And so they put him in this other smaller courthouse somewhere out, it was outside of town. And Mary and I were waiting there, and then Dick DeGuerin comes back from his break with all his entourage going back into the courtroom, and he comes over to me and he apologized. Man, I'm sorry. I didn't expect to see you here. What are you doing here? You know, are they calling you as a witness? I said, no, nobody's calling me as a witness. I'm fine. I'm just observing. I'm here to support the Kathy Durst family, you know, because they're in New York and they want to see him convicted. And, you know, I think I said something about, excuse my friends, I think I said, now we both know your client's a piece of shit. And you're making tens of millions of dollars off this case, and he just walked away. He kept going, but
Yeah.
he made a ton of money, you know, representing. I think at that time was 6 million paid into just, you know, to the lawyers. That's what's reported. So I do know
Yeah.
that we talked about that. You did an article about me in the case. Let's see. You were covering a lot of celebrity and crime stuff at the time as well. Tell me about some of those
Yeah.
cases in Los Angeles when you lived out there.
One of the cases that's been kind of ongoing for many years, well, 27 years, is the case of the rapper Tupac, who was shot
Oh
in
yeah.
1996 in Las Vegas. And I've been following that closely for, probably the past 5 or 6 years, because it remained unsolved. And it is interesting because today the suspect, Keefe D, his real name is Dwayne Davis. He's a 60-year-old self-confessed gangster who was charged with the murder. He's actually been freed on bail today, which was a huge shock.
Today he got out.
Yeah, he's been freed on bail. He's under house arrest, up until a trial. But I mean, it was a huge shock to. Apparently, there was like gasps in the courtroom. Our guy who was reporting it for us. I wasn't there. I'm over here in the UK. But I mean, I don't know how much you know about this case, but this guy Keefe D has made several confessions about his involvement in the murder on YouTube. He's written a book called think it's Compton Street Legends, something like that, where he's written exactly how he orchestrated. He wasn't the trigger man. He didn't pull the trigger.
He orchestrated
He
it and passed
says
off the gun to the other guy, didn't he?
he says it was his nephew who did that.
Right.
So I mean, it's for anyone following the case, it's been one of these things like, why the hell is this guy not been arrested yet? He's on YouTube, he's on TV documentaries, he's written a book, and he was arrested in September. I mean, we put quite a lot of pressure from the Sun on the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police. I kept sending them these videos saying, have you seen this? Are you going to arrest this
Good for
guy?
you. Good for
Um,
you. That's
but now his defense seems to be that he made it all up for fame and fortune.
mm,
He made it up to get money from, he'd given up the drug gangster lifestyle. He was no longer dealing drugs. And so he claims he just made it all up. So obviously, time is going to tell. The trial is in June. It will be up to the judge and jury to see. But it was definitely a big shock today that he's been granted bail. Nobody saw that coming.
I got to make sure I put this video up today because that's timely news right there. Listen, I just did a story with Ignacio Esteban, retired ATF agent. He's my co-host on this show right here, and he just wrote a book about the Tupac case. And I remember from a little research I was doing with him, wasn't this guy the alleged killer or the guy who just got bonded out? Didn't he have a deal with the FBI because he was working as an informant or something, where
Yeah, so he,
where they
he
said,
had this.
okay, you know, you're not going to charge you with this, but you can never talk about it, and so he lost his deal because he talked about it. Is that something that played
Yeah,
out?
so he had a deal over in LA on another case. It was called a proffer agreement.
Right.
He confessed again to police about his involvement in the Tupac killing. He thought he was under a lifetime immunity, that he could not be charged with this. But with the very facts that he's almost in a catch-22 situation now, because the very facts that he's been speaking about this and now he's claimed in court that he was actually lying about it, it voids the deal. So this confession tape can be used in evidence, and against him. So I mean, it's going to be a bombshell trial because there's so many legal nuances to be argued out. And, we've essentially got, you know, numerous confessions from this guy on video, on documentaries, in a
Right.
book, to police. So, but obviously, maybe his defense is getting taken into account that he made it all up because he got bonded out today. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see, but it's going to be a juicy one.
How the heck did they give him bond? I remember just a few days ago, wasn't he caught on the jail phone, supposedly, allegedly, making death threats to some of the witnesses through family members, telling them to go after some of the witnesses against him? How does he?
According to prosecutors, they have jailhouse recordings of him, yeah, green lighting, which in gangster code means, orchestrating a hit. Again, his lawyers have denied that, said it wasn't in reference, it's been misconstrued. Um, but yeah, I think prosecutors were very shocked today that he got given bail.
I'm shocked about it because I did just hear that, and we just did a show about it where me and Ignacio had heard the same thing, and that he probably screwed his chance for bail. I remember reading that Tupac didn't he hang on for life for like a week before he passed away. He was like shot up pretty good, but he was
Yeah, he didn't die at the scene on the strip. He was taken to hospital and died a few days later, maybe 5 days later or something like that. So
right.
yeah, I mean, he definitely fought. He clung on. It wasn't the first time he'd been shot either. A couple of years before, he'd been shot while he was in New
At a
York,
radio
while he
studio.
was in the recording
Yeah,
studio.
it's a recording studio.
Um,
Yep.
so yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just a tragic case, a young life cut short.
Yeah,
Who knows what he might have become if he was still alive.
right. So tell
And
tell.
and and it was allegedly the reason for the shooting was, so petty. It was like a minor gang dispute over it originally started over a chain. The rival gangs used to steal each other's gold chains. It was like a badge of honor if you stole someone
Right.
else's gold chain. And that was allegedly what sparked it off. Which, obviously when you think of it, it's ridiculous to lose such a promising young life over a chain.
Right. Yeah. I can hear in your voice the crime victim advocate, the compassion. I can hear it the way you explain. You're not just a journalist. You're not just because I do know other journalists that do what you do. Who's like, it's just a story, no big deal. Let's move on and go on vacation. I could tell you feel your stories and the victim's pain. Tell me about another big case out there, or maybe in the UK that you're working on. I know a few people out there. Sean Atwood Unleashed, had me on his show, and I may be going out there hopefully if I could figure this out. Tell me, what are you working on now? Anything? I know that it's huge that
Um,
the Epstein list was released.
Yeah, so that's been keeping me busy the past week, the Epstein list. Um, yeah, there was a really another tragic case. It was two adult entertainers, a couple. One was a former professional footballer or soccer player
Mm-hmm.
in the UK, and then he turned to become an adult star, and he married another adult star, and they were very popular, not in the mainstream as well as in the adult industry because they posted lots of YouTube, social media, they had big followings. Um, and then they both died within 3 weeks of each other, and
Wow.
cause of deaths have not been revealed yet.
Hmm.
So we're still waiting to see what exactly happened with them both. And then I interviewed a close friend of the female adult performer. Her name is Sophie Anderson. And he and the well, two friends actually. These friends told me really sad tales about how she was terribly abused, starved, had forced to work in the sex industry. He punched her. He terrible tales of abuse. She had breast enlargement, silicone implants, which became infected. She lost a breast
Oh
because
my
of it. He
God.
still forced her to work, even when she had scarring. Really a sad tale. But yeah, we're still obviously they both died. We don't know what the cause of death was yet. It's kind of still a mystery. That's one story that I'm interested in.
You say
How
you
two
say
like
that they were.
young popular people can just die within a few weeks of each other.
You said something about they were very athletic or they were known for their physiques besides their career. Because a lot of times people who take a lot of supplements and everything can get it in over their heads with that type of thing, and you know.
Perhaps, I mean, obviously he was a soccer player,
Mm,
a former soccer player, so he was athletic and she obviously had to take care of her body to be in the industry she was in. But yeah, who knows? But by the end, I don't know if they were mixed up in drugs or not. I guess we'll have to just wait for the inquest.
Right. Any other big stories you're working on or helping out in?
Nothing that is springing to mind right now. I've still got very much the Epstein caught 500 pages of Epstein documents
Wow.
in my brain at the moment. It was, I don't know how many it was. It seems to, I think the fifth filings have come out today, which I've not had a chance to have a look at, but there's been 5 sets of unredacted files released. So that is a lot of information. It's going to take time, I think, for journalists to delve through it all.
Were new names released today or just extraneous material? You're not sure yet?
I am not sure because I actually think that's just happened in the last hour, so I've not had a chance to read any
Okay.
of it, but potentially. I assume there will be new names because all of these documents are documents that are already out there but unredacted, so I assume there will be more names.
Well, we also have another acquaintance in common, Samantha Markle, Meghan Markle's sister, Prince Harry's sister-in-law.
Yeah, I've interviewed her several times, not for a long time, but the time in the kind of aftermath of the wedding. I think she was giving lots of interviews about her, her relationship
Right.
or lack of relationship with Meghan. But yeah, that's another one that will be interesting to see what happens with her lawsuit, whether Meghan has to come over to the US to testify.
Yep. So again, and you know the history. My friend slash attorney is Donald Trump's attorney, Peter Tickton, and he wrote a book about Donald Trump, What Makes Trump Tick, and he happens to represent Samantha in her lawsuit against Meghan, and Samantha happens to be a very good friend of mine. It was weird how it happened, but she's became a very good friend of mine, and she's now my occasional co-host on this very show. So Samantha's right up here. She doesn't talk much about the Royals right now because there's litigation going on, but she really has a heart for crime victims. And we did the case of Sandy Modell. Professor Modell's son was murdered, Ryan, and Governor DeSantis of Florida is trying to be president while ignoring this violent crime. Um, so we just did that story again with Professor Modell. So I'll share that with this audience as well. But
Yeah, I'll have to look into that.
yeah, so Samantha's quite a character, and we'll tell you the update on the case. I'm sure you know it because you're probably ahead of me on the news. Um, I don't know what was it 2 3 weeks ago. So Peter and Samantha are in front of the Tampa courthouse, and the judge just ruled on her behalf that the case against Meghan can go forward. My problem with all this is that think about this. Harry, I don't know what you think of Harry. I don't know much about the royals. I used to like Harry. But after getting to know Samantha really well and knowing that she's a disabled Air Force veteran in a wheelchair and he's a spokesman for Invictus, and the way they treat Samantha is horrendous. They put her through hell on Oprah, Netflix, everywhere they possibly could, disparaged her for reasons that I'm aware of, but I'm not going to put out there public. That's Samantha's business. But Samantha has said that, you know, I can't say too much because she's a friend, but there's more to it. And so now she's holding Meghan accountable for the lies that she told about her. Meghan's been basically persona non grata in Hollywood, and everybody's cutting her off. I think William Morris agency just cut her off. They won't represent her anymore. So yeah, Samantha. Shout out to Samantha. We love having you on the show, and we pray for you and everything works out. So, and Peter
Yeah,
as
we'll have
well.
to see how the lawsuit goes. That's definitely
Yep.
another interesting one to watch.
All right, so we're gonna wrap this up because I know you want to go and get on that paperwork and see what else comes up. So you basically, I'll tell my audience. So Emma here is, like I said, she's more famous than she lets on because she even wrote a book about, I think it was L.A., like a picture book about L.A., a photography book.
Yeah,
I remember.
well, yeah, I got the words for it with a photographer friend. Yeah, that was a long time ago.
What's the name of the book? We'll put the link in the description and the cover on the screen for you.
Think it's a long time. I got it on my shelf. Los Angeles,
That,
Los Angeles, California photographic portrait. It's a picture book by my very good friend and talented photographer John Chappell. I just helped him piece the words together. So
Okay, shout out to
um,
John. We'll throw it up in the link and on the page. But I do remember that. I never had a chance to look it over. Um, Glad to have you here. I want to ask you this, and I try to wrap up a lot of my shows with a lot of my guests. You've done a lot of crime victim advocacy. You had you're rubbing shoulders with celebrities and people that are close to them, and they're giving you all this inside information. There's tons of questions I could ask you about that process and how do you vet information and all that. Maybe we'll circle back on another show. But I know you want to get to this new Epstein release, so I have a question for you that I try to ask everybody who's especially accomplished or inspirational like you are. If and I believe in God, I'm not perfect Christian or anything by any stretch, and I don't know what your faith is, but if the good Lord would take you home today, how would you want to be remembered to your family and to your loved ones and to your children? Never mind your earthly accomplishments. If you want to mention them, but how do you want to be remembered?
um, yeah, I don't think accomplishments had come into it. I would just want to be remembered as a good and kind person. And I always say that to my kids, like being kind is the most important thing. And it sounds cliche, but it's really true when they're, carrying on and moaning or whatever. And that's all I want for my children is to become good and kind people. And that's how I hope I will be remembered when I go. It's quite simple.
Okay. So we're going to leave everybody with that beautiful sentiment, and then we appreciate you sharing everything you have and looking me up for some more insight because the things I wrote about in my book were now released in the last week. So
Yeah. Well,
I I,
thank you
I
for
feel
speaking to me.
no problem. You've always treated me fairly as a journalist, and I look forward to having you on again anytime you want to come back. Let me know if you want to talk about something.
Yeah, great.
All right.
Thank you, William. You take care.
All right, everybody, we're signing off. This is William Steele True Crime and Steele the Spotlight Television. Inmate to Roommate, A&E Network. Shout out to my producer, Joe Ruzer. Shout out to Ignacio Esteban, Samantha Markle, the Sun, and the editors that put up with me all day long today. And for for Emma for reaching out again, so reconnecting. She sees I'm doing a lot better than I was when I first got released from prison a few years ago. So,
Thank you.
all right.